Welcome to this podcast 2 from Advanced Leadership. My name is David Robertson and I'm passionate about helping people to see their leadership increase in effectiveness, increase in focus, increase in impact and increase in multiplication. In the first podcast in the series, we began to think about mindset. If you haven't watched it yet, can I encourage you to cut here, go and watch that one first, and then we'll continue with this part 2. Welcome. In part 1 of this podcast series, I introduced the idea that transforming behaviour begins with the renewing of one's mind, one's mindset. And I set an exercise to explore some of the behaviours and then behind some of the mindsets behind that, either for yourself or for others or for you as a team. And I hope that you've carried that exercise out and you've found it to be helpful. Now, what I want to cover in this podcast is what I consider to be 5 influences on our mindset which are unhelpful. And I'd encourage you to, if you've got any of these going on, to kind of cut them out of feeding your mindset, and also then to look at 1 or 2 ways in which we can positively reprogram, renew our mindset so that it begins to change over a period of time. So let's dive straight in onto these 5 influences. The first influence that I'd encourage you to think about and to cut out is comparison. Now, of course, it's useful and helpful to look at people who are further on in leadership than we are. We can learn from them, we can read their stuff, we can listen to podcasts and all the rest of it, find out how we can increase our leadership. That's great. But when we find ourselves in a mindset of comparison, or allow rather comparison to affect our mindset thinking about ourselves, I think this is generally unhelpful. So one way in which I see that a lot at the moment is in social media. We seem to forget that when we're comparing ourselves with the others on social media, we're comparing our dullest day with their brightest moment. And so I would just ask you to watch out for comparison. Are you comparing yourself to someone else and thinking they are better than you and you're not as good as them, or even the other way around? It's a problem. Do you have someone in your team who's struggling with comparison? Do you as a team collectively have a kind of are you allowing comparison with others to come and shape what should be your mission, your vision, your strategy for moving forward? If so, can I encourage you just tackle comparison? Secondly, is what I call I wish I could think of one name for it, but I call it the open doors. And what I mean by that is that we need to be very conscious of what we open our mind to. So, for example, we are influenced all the time by what we read, what we listen to, what we watch on TV, the people we hang out with, the influences that we allow into our lives. And if you have an open door approach to that, i.e. anything goes, then I think what you're going to find, in my experience, is you're going to find your mindset affected by that, generally speaking, in the negative. One of my practical things that I do to try and help myself in this area is that, as a general rule, my wife and I, we don't watch live television. We happen to have a recorder box, so we record what we think we'll be interested in, or we go on catch-up TV or something, and allow ourselves to watch things that we know are going to help us. And aside of that, it means I can fast forward through the adverts, because I don't want my mind, this might seem extreme, but I don't want my mindset affected by advertisers. You know what I mean? You think about it, they are trying to affect your mindset. That's how they sell things. So I don't want to be affected by some of the images, some of the ideas, some of the concepts that are being promoted there. So I don't have an open door to my mind. I want to very carefully think about what I'm allowing to shape my thoughts about myself, my thoughts about my spouse, my thoughts about my kids and grandkids, my thoughts about my work colleagues, my thoughts about the world around me. I want to have a perspective which is guarded, as it were. So if you've got an open door mentality, you just watch anything, you read anything, listen to anything, I would suggest that it might be helpful just to close that door at least a little. My third influence I'm calling randomness. And what I mean by that is that we allow ourselves just to fall victim to random decisions. And an example for me is I try to discipline myself to go to the gym 2 or 3 times a week. But what I find is that when I allow my mind and my thinking to be affected by randomness, i.e., I can think of 50 other things to do instead of going to the gym, I find that my behavior that I want to do, i.e., go to the gym and to be healthier, is affected by me allowing my mind to be random. So, as opposed to that, what I want to suggest, it kind of works for me, is I decide I want to go to the gym on Tuesday morning, and so I make steps on Monday night to make that not random, but a decision that I'm going to carry out. Now, next podcast number 3, I'm going to talk about the power of habit, and I'll address this a little bit more. But if you've got randomness, you just like do anything at any time, then it's going to affect your mindset in an unhealthy way. The fourth one is isolation. There is a massive challenge in society with isolation, but in leadership, what's really clear is that leaders who grow the most, leaders who increase, leaders who advance, are leaders who are in a cohort with others. It might be a leadership cohort. You might be a group of managers of you who get together and talk about things that are important. It might be a team of your peers that get together. If you're in a church setting, it might be a life group or a house group that you're part of, where you can actually be in community and work through things. I would suggest to you that we weren't designed to be isolated beings, and so if we allow our mindset to be formed by isolation, it's not a very helpful thing to do. So I want to encourage you, as you want to grow in your leadership, to make sure that you've got accountability around you. You've got a group of people, peers, leaders that you trust, that you know that in their company you're going to grow and you're going to advance. And number 5 on my list of things, I wish I'd thought of 5 really jazzy names with it all begin with a letter P, but I didn't. So here's number 5. Number 5, effective thing that affects our mindset negatively is playing tapes of the past. Going back through our early life, going back through our past experiences and playing those tapes over and over to ourselves. Now, I heard once someone say that the voices that we hear, we compute at 1 times speed, but the voices in our head play at 3 times speed. So what is in our mind is going to dominate what we hear from others. So for example, if your spouse says that she or he loves you, that's great. That's a voice that's coming to you, and that's going to encourage you and make you feel loved. But if you have a mindset of playing tapes from the past where you had a poor experience in an earlier relationship, or even in your family of origin, and the tape plays back, you're not lovable, you're not loved, that speaks 3 times louder than that one voice that's come. So we have to discipline ourselves to catch ourselves with playing those tapes from the past, and partly that comes out of that exercise. So if you look at the exercise that was the end of podcast 1, those circles and behaviours and why that might have come through, you can look there and you may find a pattern there related to tapes from the past, playing things that people have said to you in the past, attitudes that you've absorbed from the past that are unhelpful. So there's 5 things: comparison, open doors, randomness, isolation, playing tapes from the past. So if any of those 5 are active in your life, I would encourage you just to be thinking about how you can stop that having any access to forming your mindset. Now, of course, there are loads of other things. I'd love to hear from you in the comments section below. If you can think of other negative influences on your mindset, I'd love just put that below, and I'll take the opportunity to read that and to respond in any way that can be helpful. So, thank you for watching. Until next time.